Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Friday, everybody's favorite day, pretty much, right? Or well, Saturday is probably the favorite day, but of the 5 school days, I think Friday is probably it, right? So Mark is here. Good morning, Mark. Unadi is here. Good morning, Unadi, and Shota is here. Good morning, Shota. So, let's see. Yesterday, so here's what we'll do today. Again, we'll deal with China and Chinese Communist Party, probably for maybe almost the first half of class. I'll give you some final time to finish up your sources today, so that maybe you don't have any homework on the week. Well, maybe you don't have any homework later tonight because it's due today. But that's kind of what we'll do. Okay. So let's see. So where were we? Oh yes. We were watching the video yesterday, the history of the Chinese Communist Party, but also, that's basically the history of China, right? Because modern China is entirely shaped by the Chinese Communist Party, right? And so we saw yesterday that Mao, he got into power and he attempted to put communism into place, right? Collectivizing farms and kind of stimulating agriculture. And in general, how did that go? Did that go well? Did it go not well? I'm sort of I guess I'm making a general question out of questions like 2, 3, and 4, kind of. Because we know Mao attempts to kind of collectivize farms, right? And he's kind of successful in that, right? The people kind of go along with it. But again, he's trying to sort of increase agricultural production and get industry going. And does that work? You think what? And what makes you say it didn't work well, or didn't work quite so well?
He's giving the very he sustained he tell us, for example, he told them to give like 1,000 kilogram food, very small grams. So this number is like impossible. But like the people want to achieve this goal.
Yeah.
So like they just like lie the numbers or do something like that.
Yeah.
But actually the real number is not that high. So like the people just like give the food they eat or something something they need in their daily life to give it to the government to show that they achieve it.
Yeah, there's a real. Yeah, I just want to look up a word here. Yeah, like when I'm. Whoops. Oh, that's not going to be. Hey, Sophie. I'm thinking of. There we go. I'm kind of thinking of this word here, naive, right? I don't know if you've ever heard this English word, but it kind of feels like that's what was happening during this period, right? Is that everyone, Mao kind of thought that, if everyone collectivized and if everyone just, wanted it enough that things would get better, right? And so he kind of convinced the people, and that, like you said, the people wanted to achieve these goals, right? And they worked very hard, but it seemed like the plan was not very good, right? But everyone believed very wholeheartedly in that plan, right? And so we saw Mao try to collectivize farms, but that didn't quite increase agricultural production. We saw the Four Pests campaign, right, which was meant to try to get rid of all the things that ate, grain and ate people's food, but of course that backfired when, insect populations became huge. We saw his Great Leap Forward, which kind of was a bit of a failure as well, right? Because again, the collectivization alone was not enough to increase the amount of harvest, right? The amount of food. And his industrial plan was not very organized either, right? And so he just wanted people to start doing industry in their backyards, right? And again, you can't really do that very well, right? Making iron and making steel is not really something you can do in your backyard very well, right? You need a factory, right? And so, his plans were probably well-meaning, right? But and the people, of course, wanted to achieve them, but again, the plan wasn't very good, unfortunately, right? And some of the things that I think Mao believed in, and if I'm wrong, let me know. But I think Mao kind of believed that he could deliver the people a certain kind of prosperity and experience with communism, but it just didn't work, right? And maybe we shouldn't be surprised that it didn't work, because it didn't really work in the Soviet Union either, right? We saw Lenin and Stalin and Khrushchev, all of those guys struggled to increase agricultural production in the Soviet Union, and none of them succeeded, right? Lenin tried with his new economic policy, which helped a little but didn't solve the problem. We saw Stalin use an iron fist, right, to enforce communism. That didn't really work either. We saw Khrushchev try to be a little softer with people, right? And when the people were hungry, he bought grain and he tried to increase agricultural production, but that didn't work. And here, Mao is kind of running into the same thing. It's not working, and it's not, it's a bad plan, right? Even though everybody is very, earnestly wants to accomplish it, right?
Actually, the most thing is the Chinese agriculture and the industrialization actually embrace all the politics, all the works the people did by the globalization is giving more efficiency. But why they didn't achieve the most plans, the main reason is because most plan is just impossible.
Yeah.
I forgot the exact number, but it's just ridiculous.
Yeah. Because I think Crazio was telling me the plan was in 3 years, as rich as Great Britain or as developed, and then in 5 years.
It's just impossible. We can't just achieve this because we want to and we do it.
Yeah.
This is need a lot of support from the other countries.
Yeah, and if you look at a country like the United States, they had, let's say, by the time Mao is kind of trying to do his industrial things, the U.S. has been an industrial country for 70 years, right? And Britain has been an industrial country for longer. And Mao's idea that in 5 years we'll be at the same place, that's tough to do, right? And especially considering your main ally, the Soviet Union, they're behind, right? Mao's trying to get where the U.S. is with the help of the Soviet Union, but the Soviet Union's not where the U.S. is either, right? We said that in the 1970s, people in the U.S. were living in the 1970s. People in the Soviet Union were living a 1920s quality of life. So the Soviet Union was kind of 60 years behind, and they're the ones who are helping Mao as he tries to be the same as the U.S., right? So yeah, that's probably a good point too. It's not realistic, right? It's too fast, right? It's too fast. So we kind of see that Mao's Great Leap Forward is kind of, well, I don't know if it's a great leap back, but it's not much of a leap forward, right? The kind of industrialization and agricultural development that he wants is going to take a lot longer than he thinks, right? And in the process, we should probably note that a lot of people will die, right? And so this Great Leap Forward will not be successful, right? The Four Pests campaign, famine, drought, flood, all of these things will kind of combine to, create a lot of suffering in the people, right? And we should also point out that Mao's Red Guards and I don't know how to pronounce this word. I was saying cadres, but maybe it's cadres. I'm not really sure how to pronounce it. I've only seen it written. But those people are out there kind of ideologically trying to purify people, right? And so people who are, accused of, being capitalist or not communist enough, they'll be subjected to re-education, right? They'll be, sort of taken away to be retrained because their thinking is wrong, right? They have wrong. If you're not thinking in terms of communism, and if you're not thinking in terms of Mao, then you have wrong thought, right? And you're going to be re-educated. And so, again, this is a bit of a disaster, right? It doesn't really work the way that Mao thinks it's going to. His targets are a little bit unrealistic, and some of his methods backfire, right? And things like the Four Pest campaign just make things worse, right? And so we said that by the time that like 1965 or so rolls around, even though the people idolize Mao, and we saw them in the video yesterday singing, a song of praise toward Mao, right? Even though he was, well thought of by the people within the Communist Party were wondering, if maybe someone else should lead, right? Because his ideas hadn't really panned out, right? They'd been a bit of a disaster. And so at that time, Mao kind of starts or instigates the Cultural Revolution. And what's that? What's Cultural Revolution? We saw that in the video yesterday.
First, every Chinese, every people in China to believe one thing, and like to believe what he wanted them to believe. As we all know, like China has like a lot of culture over this like a 5,000 years history.
Yeah.
And like there are some people believe the God or the ghost or something else. These are like all things. It's not okay like for people to believe it. He only wanted people to believe what he said. That's it.
Yeah. So and it's true, right? So China has a very long culture history. It's an amazing culture history actually, and it's one that I'm still learning about. It's not one that I knew a lot about in the past. I'm still learning, but it's pretty remarkable, the 5,000 year history that China has. And again, for Mao, he kind of, in 1949 he declares People's Republic of China, and then about 15 years later or so, there have been some successes, but there's also been some pretty significant failures as well, right? And so the question again, we were talking about this morning in a different way, but the question is why not, right? Why have they not been able to achieve what Mao has wanted them to achieve, right? Who or what is at fault, right? And so the Communist Party leaders are kind of looking at Mao and they're saying, I think it's him, right? I think he's the problem. His ideas are not great, right? But for Mao doesn't want to feel that Mao's responsible, right? He doesn't want to say that it's his fault. And the other thing that he kind of falls prey to, that I think all communist leaders fall prey to, is that the ideology is not questioned, right? Nobody, Mao doesn't think, well, I guess communism doesn't work. Maybe we should try something else, right? Because communism can never be questioned, right? It's almost like, in this way, and we talked about this before, in this way, communism is almost like a religion, right? So for true believers of a religion, you're not really supposed to question the religion, right? You don't stand up in church and say, is there really a God? Right? You don't do that in church, right? That would be really bad, right? And it's kind of the same in communism. Communism has this kind of almost religious feeling around it where you don't question communism, right? Mao's not going to stand up and say, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I chose the wrong system. Maybe we should do something else, right? And none of the communist leaders will do that because the ideology comes first, right? Communism comes before everything else. And so if Mao is not to blame and communism is not to blame, we don't want to blame the people because the people are supporting Mao. So what is the reason for all of this disaster, right? It's not Mao, it's not communism, it's not the people. It's old thinking, right? It's old ideas. That's what's holding people back, or at least that's what Mao tells the people, right? And so we need to get rid of all of that stuff, right? That's what's holding us back, he says. And so, again, the people's desire to follow Mao is remarkable, right? It's amazing. And just with, a word from Mao, starting with students mostly, but the students and the Red Guard, attempt to purge China of old thinking, right? And so we saw in the video the destruction of temples and religious symbols. We saw the destruction of a lot of books. We saw the sort of denouncement and, sometimes beating of academics and teachers, which, I don't approve of, quite frankly. Don't beat your teachers, please. I'm just trying to earn a living here. So we see that, and again, the country starts to basically tear itself apart, right? Looking for, if you will, we saw the video yesterday of the Red Guards searching someone's home for any evidence of kind of capitalist leanings, and it almost strikes me as like desperately searching for, the reason for Mao's failure, right? Where is it, right? And people are like tearing apart people's houses and tombs and temples, looking for the reason. And again, this is my opinion here. If you don't have to believe it if you don't want to, or if you don't have to agree with me if you don't want to. But pure communism doesn't really work, right? And that's the reason for the failures, is that pure communism doesn't work, right? Karl Marx wrote a paper, or wrote 2 small books saying, hey, this is what should happen. But, when it gets tested in real life, it doesn't, in its pure form, it doesn't work, right? The Soviet Union struggled with it, and now China is struggling with it, right? And so, again, unfortunately, the people are sort of tearing the country apart, turning it upside down, searching for, the reason for failure and trying to destroy it, right? And it's hugely destructive, right? It's hugely destructive. It probably sets China back 5 or 10 years from where it would have been, because everything is just turned upside down for, an 8 or a 10-year period, right? And so, hugely destructive and sad, right? Because, again, the people's enemy is not really old thinking, right? And it's not themselves either, right? There's, the people are working hard trying to achieve, prosperity, right? And peace. And unfortunately their, leader and their beliefs have kind of led them to, be chasing ghosts, right? They're chasing, trying to find fault where there isn't any, right? And so, unfortunately, it's kind of a sad period. And I think, I might be wrong about this, but I think maybe Chinese history books kind of skip over this point in history, don't they? Or maybe just talk about it very little?
Normally, like, we talk about it.
Yeah.
Not at all. Like, for example, the Great Leap Forward, and the culture is, what's that, like the culture?
Cultural Revolution?
The Cultural Revolution. most of these we have to know about it, but like we don't talk about it. How many people dies over here, or like why we don't achieve like this work. We don't really talk about these countries, but like we know that happen.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and it's, and it's, it's a difficult period, right? Because, it's not, it doesn't reflect very well on Mao, and it's, it's a tough thing to read about, right? All countries need to tell themselves a story about who they are, right? And hopefully you can tell yourself a good story, right? Hopefully the country can say that we're a great country, we've done great things, we're in a great place right now. Hopefully all countries can do that, or at least they try to, right? And so this is a chapter of China's history that's kind of, you know, gee, that sucked, right? And
Well,
yet,
yeah, I know that before. Actually, I know like how many people dies already. Cause like my family, there is grandpa or maybe older, like someone is actually studying about this.
uh
Yeah,
they were around during that time.
yeah, yeah.
And
Like I forgot like who, but like my family, some of my family, like, they are very old, but like when they was young, like they were angry about like because of the great leap forward, and some people will like go to their home to take them away, like their opinions, maybe like before this law, like their culture is very
yeah,
it's a very hard time, I think.
yeah, yeah. It sounds like it was horrible,
Yeah.
right? To either, to be subjected to this or to live in fear, right? If maybe, you know, maybe you have something that the Red Guard will find, and if they do, then you'll be taken away, right? Or you'll be beaten, or you'll have to go to prison, or to be re-educated, or yeah, that's scary, right? And it,
A lot of people died like during these times.
yeah, um, yeah, it's unbelievably destructive, right? And it, it's probably something where, like you mentioned, everyone has probably family that were affected in one way or another, right? They were either part of the Red Guard, or they were participating in it, or they were, subjected to the Cultural Revolution, right? They were negatively affected, right? So probably, I'm sure everyone in China has some sort of connection to this part of history, right? Um, yeah. Okay. So this is kind of going to go on until about 1976 or so. We said that Mao is going to die in 76, and so things are going to change, right? Just like when Joseph Stalin died, the Soviet Union turned a page, right? They went in a slightly different direction, and I think we're going to see that in China as well. So, would you, seeing as, oops, seeing as it's Friday, should we just watch the rest of the documentary to the end? Yeah? Okay. So, well, that's what we'll do. We'll watch the rest of the documentary to the end. We've watched the first 24 minutes. And so for online people, the link is in Microsoft Teams. You can start it at 24:15, which I think is where we left off. We will watch the rest. We'll take a break. We'll come back here. And I'll give you some time to work on your sources. And if you have any questions or need any help, I can do that then. Coolio? Coolio? Okay. That's what we'll do. So online people, we'll see you in a little bit. Link is in Microsoft Teams. Watch from 24 minutes to the end, okay? All right. All right, good people. And we're back. So, as you can see, I didn't ask you any questions about that specifically. We just kind of watched it and enjoyed it, or maybe didn't enjoy it, I don't know. But you can see kind of a few familiar things happening in sort of in kind of post-Mao China or post-Cultural Revolution China that have kind of happened before in other places in the world, right? We see a little bit of economic dysregulation, right? We see a little bit of economic chaos brought about by a new market economy, right? Deng Xiaoping is trying to, in a way, he kind of throws out communism, right? Mao dies and Deng says, yeah, we're gonna go market economy, we're gonna go capitalist, right? And so he makes moves to convert China's economy, but that's a difficult process, and we'll get into that a little bit next week with the Soviet Union, because the Soviet Union is going to experience, or actually Russian Federation is going to experience similar problems as they try to convert a communist or a socialist economy to a capitalist market economy. Turns out you can't just do that overnight. It's actually a pretty difficult, messy process. And so we see China kind of struggle with that transition because it's just not easy. But we also see that the Chinese Communist Party maintain their authoritarian structure, right? So communism is kind of an economy, but it's also usually an authoritarian government that controls that economy, right? And so Deng Xiaoping kind of throws out the socialism part and he puts on a market or a capitalist economy below it, but he maintains the sort of one-party authoritarian structure of the Chinese Communist Party, right? And we see a challenge to that at Tiananmen Square in 1989. The government brutally puts down the revolution, as we saw in Eastern Europe with the Red Army, right, with the Soviet Union. We saw a bit of an international backlash against that. But of course, since that time, Deng Xiaoping has taken China on a road of prosperity, right? And was his name Frank Ching, the guy who was the historian, Frank Ching? Frank was kind of telling us that, one of the strengths of an authoritarian system is they can just do things, right? So one of the problems with democracy is that it's slow, right? People have to argue and debate and vote, and opposition parties, like Frank mentions, are constantly trying to get in the way of the government. But in an authoritarian system, when the Chinese government says this is what they're doing, that's just what they're doing, right? Frank says, if they're building a road and there's a house in the way, they just tear down the house, right? Nothing really stands in the way of the Chinese Communist Party doing what they want to do. And so, I think there are negatives, right? There are cons to having a single-party authoritarian system. But one of the benefits is that things get done really quickly, right? There's no argue, there's no debate, there's no stalling. Look at what we talked about this morning. History people, you won't know about this, but Andre and Yo-Yo will. Look how long it took to take down that statue in Charlottesville. It was a 4-year legal battle to take a statue down. Chinese Communist Party wants it gone, whoosh, gone, right? No talking, no stalling, no debating, right? So with the control that Chinese Communist Party has, Deng Xiaoping is able to pretty quickly revolutionize the economy, right? And I think that, we don't have to look too hard to see that China's economy is massive today, right? They have a huge population, they have a huge manufacturing program, and there's a lot of money, right? There's a lot of money in that country. So maybe I think we'll press pause on China right there. I think I'd like to be able to come back, like next week I want to talk about the end of the Soviet Union, so I want to pick up the Soviet story where we left it. And I think I would like to circle back and talk about Xi Jinping a little bit later on as well. We'll see how time goes, but I think it would be useful for us to look at the end of the Soviet Union and Vladimir Putin, and then maybe come back and talk about Xi and who he is and what his deal is. But that's kind of what I'll try to do anyway if the timing all works out. So, oh holy smokes, it's already 11:23. Okay. So, for history, your sources are due at midnight tonight. So I'm going to give you the rest of the time to work on that. There are some people that I still don't have a topic from. So if I don't have a history topic from you, I would like it fairly quickly. So I have Unadi, I have your topic. Ben and Sophie, I have your topic. Mark, I have your topic. Jim, I have your topic. Crazio, I have your topic. And Andre and Canon, I know you're working together, but I don't know. What are you working on? Or do you know?
Still talking about it.
Still talking about it? Okay. So I would like to know by midnight tonight what topics are, okay? That is the official deadline. So I'll give you the rest of the time to work. I meant to give you a little bit more. Mahmoud, I know what you're doing too. I forgot, but you messaged me.
I want to ask more. Can we do like together also like one
You can work in pairs or alone, your choice.
Okay.
Yeah, you can work with a partner or you can, your choice. Yeah, you guys want to work together?
Yes.
Okay. Are you okay with or do you want to think about a topic together?
We chose already. Genocide of Rwanda.
Rwanda. Okay. That's good. Okay, got it. Okay, good. That's good. All right. So the rest of the time is yours to work. I will be here if you need to ask any questions. Online people, I'm going to end the live stream right now instead of just streaming a blank nothing for 20 minutes or so. So have a good weekend. Send me your topics and your sources by midnight tonight. If you have questions, let me know. And have a good weekend, and I'll see you Monday, okay? So, bye.